Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. My channel here is Discerning What is True. I am live tonight on the 28th day of December 2022, and we're going to be dealing with a particular book called Redemption Manual 4.5. Let me explain what Redemption Manual 4.5 is all about. It's basically a combination of a book that has been worked on by various people from the past in order to redeem themselves, that is, to get out of the system, that is the tax system, the system that keeps us in slavery. And it's basically for you to educate yourself historically and then eventually to move in that direction as the book continues. This book is over 600 and some pages long, and what we're starting tonight is on page 100, and it's basically a synopsis of what's happened in the history of this country, and is to give you an idea of basic foundation, or basic foundation of what is going on, has gone on in the past, so that you can begin to realize what you were not taught in school, and to educate yourself. So this is what it's about. So this is, I wanted to share this with you guys. I wanted to make sure that you know that this is the opportunity of a lifetime. This is what this is about. This is an opportunity of a lifetime to learn some things about who you are and how you're seen by the powers to be. And so what I'm trying to do for you is to share with you the importance of this. Very few people know this. Very people are even aware of this. And, you know, we never knew what we signed up for in the past. That is our Social Security number. And then what our parents did, especially our mom, the certificate of live birth. So this is all about that. And yet your Social Security is your trust. And I'm not talking about getting a monthly payment of what you've worked at from your last year or 2 years of your life, that is before you retired. I'm talking about what you truly are worth. And so I want to share this with you guys so you will understand. So we're going to go ahead and continue here with what is being revealed. And so I wanted to share this with you now. So we're going to start the reading here. So this particular title of this particular chapter here, or part of it, is United States of America, but the first word, United, is not capitalized. The rest of it is States is capitalized and America is capitalized, but not United. Okay, so here we go. The several states, that is the people, then got together and began to draw up guidelines for federal government. These were the Articles of Confederation. These articles were ratified but were never truly perfected because there were fractions between the wealthy of the new nation who still had economic and political ties with previous counterparts, that is, of the crown in Britain. Some people wanted to be aligned with England, that is, their wealth and continual wealth their wealth was locked with English rule and commerce. Others wanted to be completely separate from England. Those who favored England found that there was too much opposition to be bound with England. As a result, those in favor of England, with the aid of English bankers, did the next best thing for themselves. They pushed for a constitution governed by treaty instead of the Articles of Confederation to control the new social compact. So this is the setting here, okay? You'll realize that simply is most people don't even realize what the Articles of Confederation is. This is the states trying to work together to work in what we call in trading, in commerce. Now There is no centralized government at this point. There's no federal government at this point. This is the states trying to work out what we would call issues. Okay, and in fact, uh, many states at that point were had their own money, and it was different than the state right next to them. So there was a lot of what we call, I wouldn't call it friction, but basically the understanding simply is that to how to deal with what we call uneven playing field, so to speak. So let's continue. The Constitution was completed and established before the Articles of Confederation were brought forward in respect to Article 6. So, of the newly finished Articles of Confederation, in 1789, the U.S. Constitution was adopted by several signatory people, and therefore, after holdings, became known as states. But a few people states, that is, those being the true people who most are unaware of it, as referred to as the social compact, as states of the so-called union, that is, a marriage of the states, wanting some protection from the new social compact federal system of representative agent government. It took another 2 years for the Bill of Rights to be added to the social compact known as the U.S. Constitution. In fact, Andrew Hamilton fought against this. He did not want the Bill of Rights at all involved. In fact, Hamilton wanted a monarch form of government. That's what he really wanted. And I'm not doubting that there were others also that wanted, but he was the loudest in that particular regard. This was to protect those people signatory up to the social impact from the agency represented in government, the assumed 10 miles square, and the employees of that government. Never were all people ever invited to sign the social compact, but were sold on the assumption that the rights, privileges, and immunities apply to all people, which of course was an absolute lie. You can read H.G. Wells' The Outline of History, his third edition, revised in 1921. And here's on page 842, third paragraph, and continue on page 843. Continue reading the first 4 sentences of the first paragraph on page 843. Notice that the title of this essay doesn't include the word "the," just as General Motors doesn't imply a plural number of motors. The United States does not imply a plural number of states. There's nothing plural about the contemporary use of the term United States, as in all that is a singular proper noun, and correct usage does not include the antecedent definite article. The United States is a corporate trade name, like General Motors. It identifies a corporation, albeit federal and municipal, but a corporation nevertheless. Just as proper English doesn't include the Canada, the Finland, or the Egypt, it likewise does not include the United States. A far more accurate indicator would be the state of the United States. We read of the state of Great Britain in the Declaration of Independence, and here of the state of Israel in the news. The proper recital of the name United States identifies the for-profit, bankrupt, commercial enterprise in Washington, D.C., presently managed by the receiver in bankruptcy. So when you hear the United States, they're not speaking of the whole country here. They're speaking of the District of Columbia. Secretary of the Treasurer of Puerto Rico, a.k.a. Secretary of the Treasurer, that is, the United States is a slightly concocted fraud that plants in the minds the notion that its identity is merged with the states, when in fact it is a foreign to the people, that is, states. Note, while functionally speaking, the Republic no longer operates since the fraudulent takeover by a declared state of war. And we talked about this last night, seeing Trading with the Enemy Act after the bankruptcy. This condition is artificial, de facto, and unlawful. It is well established that the United States, aka U.S., U.S., USA, America, government, and federal government, etc., is a corporation originally incorporated February 21st, 1871, under the name of District of Columbia. That's when everything really radically changed and where we sped down that path where we're at today. the 16th statute 419, chapter 62. It was reorganized in June 11, 1878 as a bankrupt organization per House Joint Resolution 192 on June 5, 1933. And I read that last night. Senate Report 93-549 and Executive Order 6072, 6102, and 6246, a de facto, define de facto. De facto, it means simply this is not a factual government. It's the opposite. People see the word fact with this particular deal and they assume it's true. It's the opposite. De jure, that is D-E-J-U-R-E, is the true government. De facto is not. So originally, the 10 square mile tract ceded by Maryland and Virginia and compromising Washington, D.C., plus the possessions, territories, forts, and arsenals. Now, let's continue. The United States means a federal corporation. That is with the all caps name, just like your name. You are actually a corporation with your all caps name. Okay? You don't understand that, but that is not the proper way in English to write your name. That is also not the proper way to address the country, because it's not a country. It's a corporation because it's all caps. Title 28 U.S.C. Section 3002, parentheses 5, Chapter 176. It is clear that the United States is a corporation. 534 Federal Supplement 724, emphasis added. Note, from 1776 to 1789, the United States was a confederation, and after 1789, it was a singular incorporated federal nation system. So you can see that there are actually only 13 years that the confederation took place, but it really actually wasn't that. It was actually 1781. There was no form of government before that at that point. So let's continue. The significance of this is that as a corporation, the United States has authority to implement laws for we, the people of the United States, but no more authority to implement its laws against all the people than does McDonald Corporation. Except for one thing, the contracts we sign as surety for our straw man with the United States through misrepresentation of by and for the creditor bankers. These contracts binding us together with the United States and the bankers are actually not a party in interest with us, but with our artificial entity. Go look at your banking statement. Go look at it. Go look at a credit card. That is your credit card statement. You'll see that actually you have all caps name. So you're seen as a corporation, but you're not told this at all. You're not told any of this. It's also a fictional cell. Okay? So let's see where we're at here. Acting as a transmitting utility, or as they termed it, the office of person. Person is not a human being, folks. Okay? Which cleverly uses the same descriptive alphabetical denoted letters as the name given to the living, breathing people, privately at birth, but with one difference. The form identification changes to symbolic alphabetical spelling with all capital letters. That's your red flag. Always has been, folks. The United States as a corporation, that is in all caps, created in England, came under the jurisdiction of England. This entitled England to create laws as English saw fit to do. Establish those laws in the United States, all caps, and everyone who at that time was a 14th Amendment citizen were subject to obey those laws. This also placed the Congress of the United States, again in all caps, above that portion of what we think is the Constitution, not under the authority of the Constitution, but copyright. Remember, the only Bill of Rights left at this point in 2009 is 4 amendments. That is 13, 14, 15, and 16. This is all the courts are required to take cognizance when any people appear in their courts, accepting those people operating via international public order by the way of the supreme law of the land, treaty, within the framework of any form of social compact. The 1929 stock market crash and the Great Depression that followed placed the so-called American people in desperation, homelessness, poverty, and even starvation. The minds of the people were focused on survival. They were then in a condition to accept any handout given by their government, no matter what the cost to their freedoms. Yes. So it was a form of trauma, enormous form of trauma that took place. And after this, think about it wholeheartedly here. This is after they said they would not have this type of thing to happen to the country before it was given the right of the Federal Reserve System. Now they had complete control and they can manipulate anything they want, no matter what. Government has no part of it, has no idea. You got to get that in your head, folks. They're not anything with the government at all. Your representatives over 100 years ago traded. That is, they compromised and they traded their own country to become a corporation, to be ruled by bankers instead of being ruled by the government. If you think government's bad, folks, bankers are far worse. Okay? Look at the example of what they do with people's checking accounts or savings account, and you'll find out real quick that they can close your account because you basically have given them the prerogative of doing that. You don't even know you've done these things, you see. So anyway, we're going to go back to the page here, what I'm reading. All people were drawn in as 14th Amendment citizens by such misrepresentation through the 15th Article of Amendments to the U.S. Constitution and the registration of people's birth records, and in return handed certificates in exchange for this perfected consideration of the sole, S-O-L-E, and exclusive right to vote under the new social construct of democracy. So you have to understand that what's happened here in this thing was at one time we were considered a republic. And you have to understand what I just shared with you last night was to do with simply is that the states had the power until Wilson allowed the people to have this decision of voting for the 2 senators in each state. Instead, in the past, it was actually the state, which was a form of a republic. But when you give it to the people, you've transformed from what we call a republic to a democracy. It's that simple, folks. Some of the things I'm adding here, when I'm explaining to you, is not in this context of what I'm reading. I'm trying to help you to understand this. People are further enticed deeply into that system by volunteering for many other licenses and privileges given by the corporate U.S. government. The problem is you already had these privileges, you see, but you were told, you see, you were already manipulated and brainwashed even at that age. That is, my grandparents. We were also made enemies of the agency, the United States. This act gave the agency of the United States, as in all caps, authority under the law of war and as a captured alien people to force anything on them as the corporation chose to create or deprive them of, whether for their benefit or not. This is the explanation of simply what happened after the war, the Civil War, battle, the war between the states, however you want to say it. This is what took place already. Because what happened was simply is they no longer saw the South as a part of the Union. Now they're what they call as a military dictatorship looks at. They're a captured alien people. Okay? This is why the South hates the North. It's always hated the North, not strictly because they lost the war, but what happened after the war was what they call Reconstruction. And basically, means to form again. You see, this is there was a construction of the country beforehand. Now there's a reconstruction. We're going to change the rules of the game here. Then in 1976, Congress moved any semblance of justice in their court system with Senate Bill 94-201 and 94-381. From this point forward, the officers of the court can construe and construct the laws to mean anything they choose them to be. You can look at this, a couple cases here. Is Seat Dyke, D-Y-E-T-T versus Turner, 439P RPTRS 266, which was done in 1968. And Utah versus Phillips, 540 RPTRS, which I think is Reports 936. And in 1975, and Republico, that is RESPUBLICA versus Sweers, SWEERS, 1 Dallas 43. As 14th Amendment citizens, the people are not citizens of the social compact known as the United States of America. That is not in all caps there. Okay? It's a country. As we have already been taught to think, we are actually subjects via international public order to whatever jurisdiction which we are found in or reside in, unless we have otherwise emerged into some other political status freely determined to prove that we, the people, don't belong to such a social construct, to whichever may claim a interest however defined, or by whatever means shown to operate. And you'll notice that the word reside, that word eventually is used in this whole perspective, is to do with reside, is mean they use the word residence. That's a key word, where your residence is. And you think your residence is where your house is. You don't know. That's not right. You reside now, because you're a 14th Amendment citizen, you reside in the District of Columbia, because it is a corporation, and you are that corporation also with the all caps letters. Okay? You start thinking about this and explaining it, you begin to figure out, oh, okay, now see, because they'll ask you simply, where is your residence? And you're fooled by this, thinking your residence simply is where you live at, what your house is at. And that's not right, because that's where your non-fictional self lives, your real self lives, your true man or woman. Okay? Not the fictional one, not the corporation name. Okay? There is no law today except as relevant to such fictions governed by copyright status to be interpreted by judges who construe and construct whatever they choose to have these private statutes mean. So in other words, these statutes that there are in books, they determine the definition. Okay? You need to understand that also, because that's how they fool you. We as sovereigns irresponsible, continue to recognize the illegal legitimate Crown of England and its fiscal agent, the IMF. The IMF stands for International Monetary Fund. As principal of all the people on the soil, whether referred to as the United States or by whatever derivative or variation thereof. In reality, the IMF was the creditor of the United States, a corporation. And notice that the IMF here is in all caps, and the United States is now in all caps, a corporation, but never you, lawfully or legally. The creditor of the United States, all caps again, design invisible contracts. Let me change something here real quick. We as the sovereign people of the earth through the invisible contracts and are irresponsible to reject the creditors, that is the IMF ideas, have been duped into voluntarily giving up our substance and energy. Our energy is simply what we work for. Our substance is who we are. Our energy is what we do as work on this planet, to the private order of a few well-orchestrated men by way of the mythical creatures, creations of corporations affecting our condition and present situation. You find that there is a common thread woven throughout our entire history. That thread is commerce, the merchant, the money changer, that is the banks, the law merchant, that is the law of commerce, civil law and maritime law. This is not to say that commerce is bad. It does, however, say that commerce brings with it the laws of commerce. Wherever commerce goes, it brings laws that can bind people into slavery. This can happen only if the people agree with it, depending upon their condition of mind, either willingly through misrepresentation or by mistake. We'll continue. United States -US, that is all caps. That is U.S. is all caps. USA, all caps. U.S. A. all caps. America and United States of America. Means a federal corporation. Title 28 U.S.C. Section 3002, parentheses 15, parentheses A. Chapter 176. It is clear that the United States is a corporation. 534 Federal Supplement 724. I give you these numbers so that you can actually look up this information, okay? Which is here, but it's also for you to actually do your homework. It is well settled that the United States, that is regular United States, LL is a corporation. Originally incorporated February 21, 1871, under the name of District of Columbia. 16 Statute 419, Chapter 62. It was reorganized June 11, 1878. All things changed. This is why I'm going to say something. All things changed in this country after the war between the states. It all changed. Everything radically changed. Okay? No one really realized that, although some did, but very few. It was reorganized, as I said, June 11, 1878, a bankrupt organization per House Joint Resolution 192 on June 5th, 1933. Now let me explain what's going on. This is a piecemeal deal here. There's just they do certain things and they wait for a little while and they do piecemeal something else. And that's what happened here in June 11, 1878, a bankrupt organization. That is, it was reorganized on June 11, 1878, but it was a bank. Now it's a bankrupt organization per House Joint Resolution 192, based upon June 5th, 1933. What President Roosevelt did was what I would call a desperate situation, but it was all benefited the banks again. It didn't represent anything to do with the people. They used a form of trauma upon the people that they were become desperate. So Senate Report 93-549 and Executive Order 6072, 6102, and 6246, a defined de facto government originated a 10 square mile tract ceded by Maryland and Virginia and combined to Washington, D.C. The significance of this is that as a corporation, the United States has no more authority to implement. Wait a minute, we've got a problem here. Why does that do that? Why does that happen there? I must have turned it back, so we'll continue on. All these contracts you sign carry with them your agreement to obey and uphold all the laws, rules, and regulations passed by the Congress of the United States Corporation and the state of such and such, if it's where I'm at here in South Carolina, and will be enforced against you. From that day forward, you can never own any property because the state now have possession of it all. In 1964, the state attained title to our property. Did you know that? We can only rent the homes that we believe we own. That's why you pay taxes, folks. But they also changed that too. Continue. We only have a certificate of title, not the actual title. It's a certificate. It means it's a copy. It's not the original. So we have a certificate of title to the car we think we own. The state owns the true title to our homes and to our cars. So they're playing Mickey Mouse with you a lot, okay? It would almost be, basically, if they didn't give you any title to the car or the house, you would realize something's wrong. But what they've done is they've deceived you. The state owns the true title to our homes and to our cars. You know why? Because it became the collateral. And also you. To everything we thought or think we own. You married the state through your marriage license. That's correct. You married the state through your marriage license. And your children became wards of the state. All of this was pledged, including all the fruits of our future labor, to the bankers as security against the national debt, and was placed in the possession of the Secretary of State of each state as an agent for the trustee of the bankruptcy, that is, the U.S. Department Secretary of the Treasury. This was further tightened up when we applied for our Social Security number after 1935, by contracts which we hurriedly and voluntarily enter in with the SSA was signed into law. Then it was further solidified as we entered into another additional contracts and applied for a variety of benefits and licenses, all voluntarily affairs without full disclosure. So what happens simply, you sign something and you never really looked at the small print, or you never bothered to ask them, what is this about? We all have done this. I've done this too, okay? At a very young age, I think I was 15 or 16 years old. Oh, you need to get this. Everybody's doing it, such and such, not realizing what I was really doing, you see. States lose sovereignty. President Roosevelt then called all the governors into Washington, D.C. for a conference. These guys are busy, aren't they? This was the beginning of all states losing the remainder of their sovereignty. It was not until 1944 that the corporate states lost all their power over the corporate United States with the Buck Act. With this act, the states became essentially 14th Amendment citizens as well. See how this is done? Again, piecemeal. This completed the destruction of the corporate states having any power to protect any usurpation by the United States government. The corporate states now were under the jurisdiction of Washington, D.C. The adoption of the Uniform Commercial Code, UCC, by all states in 1964 and a number of other like laws and acts were incorporated into this nation. This made the Uniform Commercial Code the supreme law of the land. Let me say that one more time. This made the Uniform Commercial Code the supreme law of the land, not the Constitution, folks. In 1976, Congress took away any semblance of law or justice left within our own court system. All law today is now construed, constructed, and made up by the judges as it happens before your very eye. The military social construct known as the United States, all caps, acting through the guise of the United States and Congress assembled, took away any control or authority we might have had over the court system. See Public Bill 94-204, which deals with their court system, and Senate Bill 94-381, dealing with public law. This has been well hidden from all of us. Many of us who going into court often wonder why and how the courts can simply override their laws, as we cite those very laws within our paperwork. It's very simple. Now that we know how they do it, they operate on their words, construed and construct. A simple word such as in, changed to at, as in, at law, or in law, has a total separate meaning. For example, if you're in the river, you're wet, you can swim, etc. But if you're at the river, you might enjoy a refreshing picnic, play baseball, or run races. See the difference a single word can make? And the attorneys often change this word when they answer your motions, in addition to many others. You will be paid in dividends when you read the answers of attorneys to your paperwork. Compare what they claim their case law says to the actual case law itself. You'll discover that they have actually changed the words they're in. This is illegal, you might say. No, not according to the Senate bills above mentioned. You see, they can now construe and construct any law or statute to mean whatever they decide it to mean for their benefit. You don't know any of this. You think they are railroading you in a kangaroo court. No, they are legal in what they do, according to the present social contract which they are bound to uphold. They usually follow law to the letter, their law, private international law, the law of contract, which you know nothing about. This law is called contract law. The next section here is contracts. Failure to understand the above and realize what law you are dealing with when you go into their court will only lead to failure. That's why I recommend that people will, when they offer a summons, and if you think about that word, summons has enormous impact, because summons is, what does that mean? Well, it has something to do, in my opinion, to do with the occult. You wanted to summon someone from the dead, and you are dead. With your all caps name, you are dead. You're not a living person. You're not a living human being. Let's continue. Even if you have filled your if you have filled your UCC-1 and have captured your title and your artificial entity, this makes no difference in their courts. Why? They operate in total fiction in the land of Oz in respect to any consumed standing which you may, by mistake, think otherwise. They can only recognize contracts. You are a real sentimental being outside of their creative social compact, contractually speaking. Whatever you file in their court, whether it is your UCC-1 or use any of their perceived laws, which is copyrighted in the administrative or judicial power of their original jurisdiction inside of their established social compacts or otherwise, it's all that is real, lawful, and credible in truth to them. They do not recognize truth of any sort other than by such compacts or the treaties between such and social compacts. The only recognized fictions known as corporations, which they administer and/or contract law, govern social compacts and their corporations and such applicable treaties between them. So when you go into any court, be aware that it is their private copyright law that the judge or the prosecutor can construe and construct that law in any fashion they choose. They call this practicing law. It will always mean what they choose it to mean according to their present custom, uses, and passages of the day. So are their courts bound by the Constitution, law, statutes? No. Their courts are bound by contracts only and the statutes used to enforce those contracts. When we use their statutes, Constitution, UCC, rules and regulations, all copyright without a license from the bar, we are in violation of copyright infringement, and punishment is mandatory. There is no law in this illusional nation/state. Read Norman Angel's, Angell, The Great Illusion, which was printed in 1910 and then reprinted in 1933. Under whatever form of name for which such is known, or the world for that matter, there is only contract law by which the private people, that is the sovereigns, treat with one another in the so-called global public forum, where commerce is concerned, and is the order of the day, known as international public order via private international law between sovereigns and or their creative social compacts and corporate constructs. So you're dealing with what we call contract law, and that's when you make a contract. And so here's the illustration I'll give to you. We talked about marriage license here. And when you decide to get married, that is, if you do what I call a common law marriage, that is between you and God and your mate. And that is a contract between you and your mate, period. So there are only two people involved. But if you go to the justice of peace or you do it at a church, then you have to understand that church is actually a 501(c)(3) organization, which means they are within the bounds of government. They actually are not separated in this country, folks. You've been lied to. Okay? About that whole deal. So when that happens, there are three people in that contract, not two. Do you understand? And so when you sign your name, such and such, which is a contract, your autograph, your signature written down, that means you agree to them being the third party. Just like that, you've lost control of everything with your marriage. Okay? Let's continue. So, summary. We can see throughout all walks of life in our collective history that Babylon, or however one wishes to refer historically to an oppressive system or whatever form any social compact of society takes, Commerce and merchant law have followed wherever the productive people go. The bankers were waiting in the wings when the founding fathers established a new social compact for themselves. It was only 2 years after the Constitution was enacted that the bankers threw them into bankruptcy. The newly founded government of the social compact moved over to the side under the assumed 10 square mile jurisdiction their Congress controlled. In 1860, the southern states walked out of Congress, as stated earlier. This officially ended the lawful side of the Constitution under a Republican form of government. That's why what took place here is so critical that most people do not even aware of it. They think all of it took place actually with the beginning of the country, but it ended in 1860. Due to the ongoing breaches of the social compact by several of the beneficiaries within several of the individual compact party members, state constructs, and their abuse of the federal branches of the social compact designed to forbid such breaches, but instead uphold the breaches to the social compact until the Union was reduced to chaos and eventually destroyed and replaced by a new form of republic. That is, look at the Gettysburg Address by the attorney, that is President Lincoln. He was a lawyer. Not unlike the continual revamping of the 4 or 5 French republics historically until the bankers had complete control of the social compact to their liking. In 1871, the assumed 10 square miles and its territories that Congress controlled was incorporated in England. The Constitution was adopted as the bylaws of their corporation. This ended completely their previous constitutional standing. The beneficiaries of the original signatures, their blood, posterity, brackets, to the social compact no longer had a constitution within the framework which their forefathers had created for their benefit by and through such agencies and offices of trust, honor, or profit, could or would be bound or controlled to the beneficiary's sole and express benefit. The United States, that is all caps, as a corporation created in England by and through treaty, now came under the jurisdiction of England. Now think about this, what's happening here, folks. Think about it. They waited to eventually to control their own country. That is England. No matter what happened, the war between them, it just got us later on, less than 100 years. This entitled England to create laws as England saw fit to do. England established those laws in the United States, again all caps, and everyone who at that time or would be by such misrepresentation as could be fostered upon the unsuspected people were our 14th Amendment citizens. They were and are subject to obey those laws, however defined by their esquires, which is attorneys. This also placed the Congress of the United States above that portion of what we think is the Constitution, not under the authority of the Constitution. Copyright. Remember, the only Bill of Rights relative to all walks of life at that point in time were eradicated. In other words, they were put to the side, no longer meant anything. So the first 12 amendments are gone via martial law by 4 articles of amendments, which are 13, 14, 15, and 16. This is all the courts are required to take cognizance of whenever you appear in their court. So you see the idea of all these other, the Bill of Rights and the other 2 after that, 11 and 12 amendments, don't mean anything to them, folks. That's something I did not know. Next, the merchants of Babylon, that is the bankers, moved deeply into our nation by the establishment of the Federal Reserve Bank in 1913 and the IRS to collect the interest on their loans made to the United States. In 1929, stock market crash and Great Depression, that followed place, the people in desperation, homeless, poverty, and even starvation, as it is today. This is what's happening right before our eyes again. Think about what's happening before your eyes right now. There are people desperate, they're homeless, they're in poverty, and they're starving. Okay? This orchestrated bankruptcy was not only local, but was carried out repeatedly on a planetary scale. The minds of all people were orchestrated and forced to focus on survival. They were then in a condition to accept any handout, that is the New Deal, given by the new order government, no matter what the cost to their, that is, fair deal, their freedoms. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he's a traitor. Treasonous places the beneficiaries' social compact trust entirely into socialism. All walks of life were drawn in as 14th Amendment citizens through the registration of our birth certificates. Again, this is all piecemeal. They do something, later on they come down, plan it, and it becomes law. And people are unaware. Very clever. All walks of life were further enticed deeply into that system by volunteering for many other licenses and privileges without any consideration given by the government to reduce our rights into privileges and then to be reduced to paying fees for the exercising of such privileges, which could be taken by the state for whatever reason it deems necessary. All walks of life were also made enemies of the United States, all caps. This act gave the United States, all cap, authority under the laws of war and as an alien captured people to force anything upon us they choose to create unless one emerges and discussed above. So you see this, you must come out of her. This is what this is part of also. Okay. You must come out of her and see what is going on here. Okay. Therefore, all walks of life sank further into socialistic communism. If you read the 10 planks of communism, the Communist Manifesto, you discover that this nation has fulfilled every plank successful. We are indeed a communist nation, period. Then in 1976, Congress removed any semblance of justice in our court system with Senate Bill 94-201 and 94381, as stated on page 25. From this point forward, the officers of the court can construe and construct the laws to mean anything they choose them to be. Again, this is reiterating what he's been talking about earlier. As 14th Amendment citizens, we the people are not citizens of their social compact like we have always been taught to think. We are actually, each and every one of us, a sovereign of planet Earth through the unalienable birthrights to which the laws, nature, and nature's creator entitle us. Today, as in ancient Babylon, various walks of life have idols of worship, of which money, i.e., Federal Reserve notes, represents such a graven image created by people. Both represent a fiction of construed value. The better way of saying represent would be represent. Okay? Represent. No longer present, you represent it. Okay? You change it, you overlap it. A fiction of construed value, for whatever reason any market would bear, based upon conditions of supply and demand. The value established is whatever is given accordingly, relative to anyone's particular inordinate affection of such idols. Today's law has become a fiction of a corporate copyrighted statute to be interpreted by judges who construe and construct whatever they choose to have those status mean. So you're not playing on a level this is why people don't understand. When they go to court, they lose. They lose every time. They have no idea. They think that they're actually coming into a system that is an even playing field, just like you would be in a football game. Both teams are playing, and the rules are supposed to be based equal for what happens. But that doesn't happen in the courtroom, folks. You see, you're already a slave when you walk into that door of the courtroom because they don't see you as a sovereign. And don't ever put sovereign citizen back to back. This is an oxymoron. Citizen means slave, folks. Period. Today's law has become a fiction of corporate copyright statutes to be interpreted by judges who construe and construct whatever they choose to have those status mean. Do you now have a different viewpoint on where you actually are now from where you thought you were before reading this manual? Demonstrate to those of like or kindred spirits the difference between where you were or though you were when you began reading this manual and where you now know you are in terms of your political, citizen, and legal standard within the social compact known as the United States, all caps. Now, the rest of the story of the terms of title of nobility. As I continue here, The hierarchy of authority from the sovereign man and woman. Maybe this might be my last part here, so we won't go too much farther than this. So let's continue on. Now the rest of the story of the term titles of nobility. The hierarchy of authority from the sovereign man/woman to their family has ever existed on any presumed authority relative to any particular one or another outside of contract. To anyone in the family with respect to any neighborhood or any townships or any counties or any states or any country, and finally to any type of social construct purporting to exist upon this planet or otherwise, because all such constructs are fictions of the mind in relation to the flesh and blood, the true sovereigns of authority existing on planet Earth. Therefore, the divine structure of the family is the only true source of sovereignty outside of the supreme creator of all creation. Now that you know the hierarchy of authority, the hierarchy of authority that is mapped out as above, is everything running like the above line of command in today's multitude societies are constructs by which the various forms of social compacts exist anywhere? Not quite. You see, the foreign bankers knew they could not control sovereigns with this system, so they decided to design a financial system which looks like the real thing but really is not. Continue. The first thing that was done was to make an entity which looked and sounded like the forms of government to which the people of the earth were familiar with, such as the Federal Republic entitled, as it was one time called, the word United, which is not capitalized, States of America, which is capitalized, but it is not all caps. Notice that the U in United is a small u. That's because it is an adjective describing the states. In other words, they're united. It's a noun of America. What if one capitalized the U as in United States? This would be a name, a title, wouldn't it? So now we have a title for the Republic, which was incorporated in England in 1871 as an English corporation. So this means we are being ruled by a private, foreign-operated corporation, not a government. And this is why the government doesn't do the things you think they're supposed to do. You see, because it's not a government, they're no longer in control. They're just yes men, so to speak. And it's all a show in some ways also. Let's continue. Has this happened to most other such governments in planet Earth? You betcha it has. In 1944, the Buck Act, Title 4 USC 104-116, took the sovereignty away from the compact parties states so that the enfranchised states could also have a title, as in the state of Arizona. Next came the counties and municipals, that is the cities. Each had their own corporations, which usurped the organic government of the trust organically established. I've done a video of this talking about how the mandates or laws that are in a corporation, that is a municipal city, cannot be enforced by what we call I can't think of it. I know it's unincorporated. Sorry, it's unincorporated, so it's not a corporation. Like where I live at here, the city of Aiken is a corporation. There is the county, it's a corporation. The city of North Augusta is a corporation. But the town of Graniteville is not a corporation. It is unincorporated. So they cannot enforce any of their rules. They don't have a mayor, they don't have a police sergeant, okay? As handed them by their forefathers. All right, let's go back to history. Let's assume and presume what most people in the year 1788, that is January 1st, did about the United States as a government. That is, was in default to the Crown of England to the tune of 18 million lira, L-I-R-A, plus interest. Then, as a direct and proximity result, the U.S. corporate government was bankrupt in their private capacity for the start of the Constitution. Now the debt had to be paid for a period of 70 years. And this is done by a gentleman. He has books on this. I've actually heard him talk about this. His name is David Robinson, R-O-B-I-N-S-O-N. You can find his books on Amazon. Come on, people. Educate yourself. After a period of 70 years, if the Bible is res judicial and state decisional, the Creator says the people and their sexual contracts can come out of bankruptcy with their creditors. That is in England on December 31, 1858. Let's say, as an operation of law at that time, some notice was given to the nation that may have gone something like this. Excuse me, do you people really want to leave Babylon and have your liberty back now, or would you prefer to maintain the crown of England as your master and serve him faithfully? Or something along these lines. Look at Leviticus 3, chapter 3, 17, which says that if you love your master and your period of service is up, you can go to the judges, recite the fact that you love your master and you don't want to leave him. You can choose to serve him for the rest of your life by placing yourself into voluntary servitude. Interesting. After December 31st, 1858, did the Crown of England, through his attorney agents, give notice to the country? Hey, you guys want to leave Britain, Babylon, and go back to the original jurisdiction which your forefathers established for your benefit? Or do you want to have your government remain under us? Now remember, this could have only pertained to the posterity of the original signatures to the social compact. The rest of the people walking around have never emerged into any form of social compact to establish their political status according to international public order. Thereby, they are considered subjects of the jurisdiction for which they are either found in or reside in or otherwise. So apparently the southern states did not wish to remain under slavery and walked out of the representative United States and Congress assembled. Evidently, what happened is the other people to which the social compact applied failed to give notice of lawful protest. This was their equitous divine right to vote to remain in Britain or Babylon under the crown of England with continual debt, plus a reorganization of government. Thus, having failed to do so, they remained under the new law formula because the old law formula to which they were entitled to. Let me explain something here when he talks about this reorganization. This is what happens if you follow what goes in corporations. Let's just give you an example like J.C. Penney's, which has filed for bankruptcy many times here in the last probably 20 years. So what they do is they reorganize themselves. They get rid of the president of the company and reorganize. So they look at certain stores, and so many stores are making profit and other stores that are not making profit. So what they do is they get rid of the ones that are not making profit anymore. They eliminate them. And that's what they call reorganization. It's the same thing because it is a business. It's a corporation. So the government itself is not, if you say anything, does not fit in that mode of being a corporation. Government doesn't fit in that deal, okay? But that's how it's been interpreted, because what happens simply is your government has become a corporation. It gave up that. They, the senators, and well, I would say the congressmen, gave that away. Okay? But they didn't bother to tell anybody. Okay? And neither did the newspapers. Okay? Just want you to understand what's going on here. When they say reorganization, that is a key word for a corporation, not a government. And it says plus a reorganization of government. But what I'm trying to explain to you, that is a key word because I know how businesses work. Okay? Let's continue. So they wanted nothing to do with continual servitude, and so the notice, the representative agency, Congress of the Union, and the other various government concerned, that is Britain, the people did not want foreign ownership or intrigued in their local politics to override their own government structures of self-government. The Compact Party members of the northern states did not protest in any manner because they were busy fighting the Civil War, which was fostered upon them through misrepresentation and intrigued by these same foreign agents. Therefore, at the end of such conflict, they were handed a new law form to which all northern people volunteered into. This was to go on for another 70 years of captivity and subjected their fellow southern brethren to the social compact in like kind to perpetrate slavery or involuntary servitude without their free will consent into the new form by force of arms. Nothing settled by force is ever settled at all. Free will is the true test of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And any time force is used to hold any condition or union together, other than to other than to cast such conditions out to keep the peace, or breach of contract is illegal and is immoral. Any other form of choice is no choice at all. It is an affront against the divine Creator's will of liberty granted to each and every living man and woman. And with that, I'm going to conclude the talk tonight on the Redemption Manual 4.5. And I hope that you will understand what I'm sharing with you. It is vitally important for you to understand and see reality and not a dream here. And really, actually, it's a nightmare for everybody because we're all under enormous stress at this point in our lives because of what has happened in the last 2 to 3 years in this country. But it's been going on for quite a while, folks. Okay. What took place in 2008, with the whole thing with the bankers, and before then, another issue with bankers. But anyway, with that, I appreciate your attendance. I hope that you've listened. You're more than welcome to ask any questions. And with that, we'll do another particular talk tonight later. Thank you. Have a good night.